Our final term at uni has just finished. How would you sum it up?
Disorientated.
Relaxing.
Pandemonium.
Reflective.
Troublesome.
Uncertain.
It will be hopeless.
I had never been so stressed in my life.
Honestly, I was scared.
Indeed, we really did live in some scary and uncertain times. And I'm sure we've all got different opinions and experiences about it. So let's reflect on those times. Our final term together as graphic design students. But before we look back on those depressing times, let's go even further back and talk about our practices, our approach to design that we've honed over the last 3 years in our studio in Camberwell. That atmosphere, the resources, the peers and tutors we had. Being in that place was a great experience. So let's start. Kat, what took your interest?
So Chris, I really enjoyed photography and film-based practices, especially using the cameras at university. Being able to express my quirky personality through moving image, video edits and photos has been a lot of fun.
Honestly reminds me of Animal Crossing. Let's move on to Sama. Wasn't your practice revolving around VR and sci-fi?
Yeah, using the Oculus headset and the MacBook Pro available here. My practice involved around designing the future, imagining what might be, and giving people an opportunity to experience what might be like.
Very cool. What about your work, Hannah?
So my work mainly revolved around political and social issues, like gender pay gap. I must say, we have great facilities here, but some annoying ones, like this frigging printer. But I guess we'd be pretty lost without them. They help create great practical and organic outcomes, which I'm pretty sure we wouldn't be able to do off-site, like my wooden book.
I can imagine you getting angry at a printer. Let's switch to Nick. Hey, relax. What interested you?
I've been invested in projects involving community, such as in Candom, where my group and I have been interviewing shop owners and employees and finding visual ways to represent their voices. It's actually been a really engaging way to research and to document the area.
Speaking of Iwana, last I heard, you liked bookmaking, right?
Yeah, I've picked up a passion for bookmaking and print in general. In particular, the risograph has been a lot of fun, with its variation with print quality and textured aesthetic.
That risograph can be a very fickle thing, can't it? Right, Harlan, let's hear from you.
Photography and bookmaking have been my primary practices through projects such as my cookbook. Being able to cook, document the process and end results, and lay out a book in InDesign has been a pretty fun project.
Photography, eh? How about you, Camille? You're also photography based, aren't you?
I've also found myself really enjoying storytelling, through bookmaking and photography the most. Creating my own makeshift studio space, gathering objects and taking photographs of them in weird combinations has been one of my projects, so whoever reads it can find a story behind them.
Looking forward to it. Now, Lukash, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't a clue about your practice.
It's alright, Chris. My practice lies with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These goals were created by the United Nations and adapted by every country in the year 2015. The main objective of these goals is to promote economic, social, and environmental prosperity. I have been working on Goal 12, created for responsible consumption and production. My aim is to promote gift exchange economy.
Very admirable. And finally, Emma, I think your desk spoke loud and clear about your practice.
Tell me about it. Making prints in letterpress is what I've focused on this year. A place that's informed my work a lot. Setting the type can be long, but it's always fun to work with the limitations of an old printing process and see what I can make with it.
A nice print-based practice to wrap it all up. Looking back on those times, it's dawned on me that we certainly became accustomed to working in that place, in that environment with our fellow creatives around us. Perhaps we took our uni life for granted, assuming that because we were so close to reaching our dream of graduation, of completing the course, nothing could ever stop us going to that studio until the very end. And then, of course, the coronavirus happened, followed by the lockdown. When the lockdown happened, life felt like it came to a standstill, didn't it? And yet for us design students, we couldn't stop when the world did, as our deadline was only delayed by 2 weeks despite losing access to our facilities. Of course, society as a whole has been affected far greater than us, but as design students in their final term, how did it feel to adapt to both the new ways of life and working from home?
It was definitely a struggle. The world felt a lot smaller. Taking walks frequently was nice with some beautiful scenery around me, but you definitely couldn't help but notice a sense of freedom was missing.
The world just felt oddly forbidden. It was almost like having an out-of-body experience.
Right. It was frustrating not to have a social life or a sense of routine, not being able to live the life that makes us us. It's been difficult. How could we make work productively when our way of life was compromised?
And not to mention that this all piggybacked off the strikes that took place literally a month before leading up to lockdown. Of course we supported our tutors in all of this, but losing that time was already bad enough. And it was time that the university never gave back to us. It really has been frustrating looking back on this all.
Despite the shit show we were in through, it was nice to be in the company of people we go on with. If we had to be in lockdown, I definitely couldn't be with better people.
I agree, but to not have the uni support us in any way has been the most frustrating thing. There have been days where I just feel completely disregarded, having to churn out work mindlessly. They failed to address or even recognize our issues at hand. It's a disgrace.
Talking about our work, it was difficult to suddenly change the project we planned for most of our academic year. Of course, as a designer, we should be prepared to adapt, but to lose our visual of the practice over the last year was definitely disappointing.
I think I speak for most of us when I say our projects couldn't carry on the same way we planned. Many of our projects that involved going out or using the facilities had to be binned, and we had to make new ones up from scratch on the fly, which honestly was just demoralizing.
I think for many of us, we feel a sense of regret for a long time. Our tutors were always telling us that this final term was what we were building up to, and suddenly we had to switch up our practices, the way we work, and give up months of research and planning to submit for a deadline that was counting down fast. For a while it did feel impossible, but in the end, we all knew that it is what it is, and as Sama said, we had to adapt because we're designers. We still had a degree to get, and we were going to make sure we got it.
It was a tough term, changing the routines we lived and finding the motivation to make work in those uncertain times. And yet here we are, looking back on our final term of our design course, if you can call it a term. How do you feel post-lockdown? Do you guys feel relieved that it's all over?
Honestly, it sucks that we didn't get to have a final year like previous years got to, but I'm glad to be done with it. The world will definitely be different. I imagine everyone might be cautious in public, but who knows?
It's been a weird experience, not living a life with a routine and carrying on in a year where we were stuck at home. I would have really loved to use the facilities at uni, but I'm just glad that I got to submit what I could in the end.
The students, what every design student went through wasn't normal. Essentially forming new work without any preparation was incredibly hard. I'm just relieved that I don't have to work like that anymore. I definitely don't miss those times.
It was definitely the most confusing time, but it did help knowing we weren't the only ones. I'm just looking forward to going back to normality now.
Same, I imagine life will slowly start to normalize, and I can't wait to leave the same four walls I've been staring at for the longest time.
It was strange being taught online and not sitting in the same room as anyone. But it was nice to have the weight off my shoulder the moment I submitted my work.
We cannot go back to what life was before, and I don't think I can truly forgive the uni for disregarding us and forcing us to keep working in those times. Support wasn't existent, especially from the higher-ups, but we'll find new social norms, I'm sure.
I've had tunnel vision for the whole of last term, so the future in any sense of it has been out of the window for the longest time. It's pretty scary for me and all of us because the future is so uncertain.
I'm with Kat. It's very confusing to think about. But we managed to get through this final term. I'm sure the same will happen with our future. It's just a matter of living it.
Indeed. To document the emotions my peers had during this time of the COVID-19. I wonder what story will be told in this animation. Either way, there's only one thing left for us final year students. So, when all this COVID-19 stuff has passed, let's look forward to the day where we can all reunite in person. Our graduation together.